Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talk Nerdy. Today is Monday, January 5th, and I'm your host, Cara Santa Maria. We've got a great show coming up with comedian Ian Harris. But before we dive in, I want to thank those of you who made Talk Nerdy possible this week. Remember, you can become a patron of Talk Nerdy and support the show on a weekly basis, actually on an episodic basis, which technically is a weekly basis, except over the holidays. Just details. The way you do it is you go to patreon.com/talknerdy. Talk Nerdy is and will always be 100% free to download. It's because people like you are able to support the show that it makes it free for everyone else. And I've got some great supporters this week, so I want to thank you all by name here at the top of the show, including Phil T-Bear, Timothy Glover, David J.E. Smith, Pedro M. Rosario Barbosa, Jeffrey Perez, Charles Payette, Jonathan Wright, Christian Jeffrey, The Honorable Husband, Jafe, Gabriel Felipe Jaramillo Gonzalez, Brian Holden, and Jeffrey Sewell. Thank you guys all so very much. Really, honestly, I couldn't do this show without support from listeners like you. And I know that it might sound repetitive here at the top of the show when I give a shout out to my top patrons, but I do think it's important to make sure that the individuals who make this show possible are heard and are recognized each week. So again, thank you guys so very much. This show is only in existence because of you and is only able to be where it is right now. Can you believe that I'm on episode, what is this, 193? That's bananas, you guys. I can't believe I've been doing this for so long now. Yeah, wait, 192. Sorry, 192. No, I'm on 193. I can't even keep track in my mind. I've been traveling so much. So I got to think about what to do for the 200th episode. If any of you have ideas, please hit me up on social media. Probably you'll get to me the quickest if you hit me up on Twitter or through the Patreon page. Remember, I'm at Cara Santa Maria. And once again, it's patreon.com/talknerdy. All right, guys. So today I get to chat in person. I love these kinds of interviews with Ian Harris. He is called the Skeptic comedian, and he does a lot of really great stand-up around the issues that matter to those of us who identify as skeptics. He has a new 1-hour special. It's called Extraordinary, and you can rent it or you can buy it right now on iTunes or Amazon. So make sure that you search for that. He's also got a previous 1-hour special that you can check out. And I don't know, just Google him. You'll find him everywhere. He's super funny. And you're about to realize that right now. So without any further ado, here he is, Ian Harris. Well, Ian, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, so we just had breakfast. It was good.
It was very good.
I'm not used to working this early in the morning. I say early in the morning, it's now noon.
Right.
But we had breakfast at 10:30.
I'm a comedian, so this is crack of dawn.
I love it. You're a comedian, but you're also you have a wife and kids.
Yeah.
But you still sleep in.
Well, actually, I used to sleep in. Now I get up early to take my kid to school. So
oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah, I got to get up. I have a gym, so I got to be at the gym too in the morning. So
I forgot about that.
Yes.
Not like you go to a gym, like you have a gym, you own a gym.
Yeah. I just opened it up in September.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. And it's called?
Fight Science. MMA, which sounds like a fundamentalist Christian organization, right? Fight science, please go out and fight science. It's like, no, it's the science of fighting.
I love it, but it is a gym. It's not like an educational facility.
Yeah, no, it's yes.
But you've been a comic for a long time. When did you first start in comedy?
1992.
1992. When did you first start in fighting?
Yeah, I started training people 15 years ago.
But before that, were you fighting yourself?
I've been training something since I was 6.
Yeah, okay.
So I started boxing when I was 6 years old because I saw Rocky and I thought white people could fight.
Were there gyms that 6-year-olds could take boxing lessons?
It was like Police Athletic League, Golden Gloves, kind of I think in my hometown in Santa Cruz, it was the, you call those, like the community center.
Oh, yeah, like
Parks
YMCA or something.
Yeah, totally.
But were you like the youngest kid, or were there like kid boxing classes?
There was a lot of kids because
of Rocky.
Because of Rocky, yeah. This was, and it might have been Rocky. I was like 6 or 7, and Rocky and Rocky 2 were like, those were the big movies. So I think every kid wanted to box,
I love that.
Especially, like I said, I remember Eddie Murphy used to do a thing about it, but it's like every white guy all of a sudden thought he could box after Rocky. You're like, yeah, that's real. That's how it goes. It's like that. No, that's not.
But you did martial arts too, right?
Yeah, I started doing martial arts probably when I was 12. So I
Okay.
boxed for 3, 4, 5 years. And then I started doing martial arts when I was like 12, 13. And I did that all. I did like karate and traditional martial arts all the way up until the time I was 21. And then I started training and fighting Muay Thai.
Oh, okay.
And I also wrestled in junior high, but I was a horrible wrestler. So, and I was also like I got beat by a girl my very first time wrestling.
I love that. That's amazing.
But it's funny though, because people are like, ha ha. And then I go, but everybody got beat by that same girl because we were in 7th grade. We went to a junior high. And so it was my first year of wrestling. And I was in the under 70 pound division. That's how tiny I was in 7th grade.
In 7th grade, you were less than 70 pounds?
Yeah, my daughter's in 7th grade now. She's 94 pounds and she's like a small girl.
That's hilarious.
And I'm like, I was 24 pounds lighter than you. And the girl that I went against was from a wrestling middle school. Like that was their sport. And she was in middle school. So she had already wrestled in 6th grade.
Yeah.
So everyone clowned me. They're like, you got beat by a girl. And then she ended up beating everybody else. And then I'm like, okay.
I love it too because it shows how progressive like your league, I guess, was, or the schools were, that it was, co-ed wrestling.
Yeah.
Because I think that even now there are girls that are fighting to be able to do quote unquote boy sports.
Yeah.
I think
there was
awesome.
not very many girls, but there were a few. And there was they had to be co-ed because there's 2 girls. It's like, who are they?
Yeah, they can't have their own league, but then they don't need their own league because they're obviously beating the shit out of all the boys.
Well, and especially when it's pre-puberty.
Yeah, everybody's the same size.
And I think actually, I feel like there's something weird about hips or body shape or something. Like girls just seem stronger at that age. Like it's weird. Like she was just a better, and maybe it's technique and doing it longer. But
I also think it's probably just because you didn't have as much testosterone in you yet. You hadn't gone through those changes that, like, it's, objectively, pound for pound, men are stronger. Like, obviously, they're always outliers.
Because of when you get, but not prepubescent.
But prepubescent, it's a level. But it's the same with, like, singers, right? Like, prepubescent boys have the choir boy, kind of the altar boy, like, voice.
Right.
They can sing soprano parts.
Right.
But then puberty changes everything. It makes your muscles bigger and your voice lower.
Yeah, and it's just weird because, like, when all things are equal, because of not going through puberty yet, I feel like the girls would always do better. And I don't know if it's a drive thing or
I bet
what.
you it's also like a mental thing. I bet you the girls were just like better at planning and better, it's like, because there's a psychology.
And something to prove too. Like, hey, I'm the girl in this sport. Like, I got to go out there. And I see it now in jiu-jitsu. I see, because they do that with jiu-jitsu competitions, which is basically wrestling. And the girls go against the boys. It's all about age and weight.
Yeah.
And I see these little girls that are killers. and I feel so bad for some of these little boys that get choked out by, a 9-year-old gets choked out by a 9-year-old girl. And I'm like, oh, man.
Do you train kids too or just adults?
We have kids at our gym, but I don't train them because I think, I don't know. It's like I like kids, but I don't have the patience.
Yeah.
Like I like playing with them and whatever, but I want to teach them something. And that's not really what you can't teach kids until they're really into it. Like the first 6 months is like running and jumping and ducking under stuff and hitting each other with pool noodles and stuff that is like getting them coordinated and comfortable. But it's like, if you can't just be like, all right, now let's start wrestling and do it. The kids get 5 minutes. They're like, this is boring.
And you have a daughter who's 13.
Yeah.
So you are past the point of having to deal with kid crap at home.
Yeah.
Like you're dealing with teen crap now.
Yeah. And she's still small. So she hasn't gone through puberty. She's like still in that area. So she still kind of thinks boys are yucky, but I can't tell how much of that is just posturing because she doesn't want me to know that she thinks boys aren't yucky. Like, so, but she has friends that are like, which is so weird. Like I go, do you have friends that have like boyfriends and girlfriends? And she's like, yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I've got that. She goes, because some of her friends are some of her friends are bigger than me. And I'm like, you're a 7th grade girl and you're 6 feet tall. This is insane. But there's also this crazy thing now where it's so amazing to me that it's accepted nowadays. Like she has girl friends that have girlfriends.
Yeah, I was going to say when you said she thinks boys are yucky, maybe she'll always think boys are yucky.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's so funny when she was very young, elementary school, like, I don't know, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, somewhere in there. I was saying something about, she goes, so-and-so has a boyfriend. I go, oh, really? A little kid boyfriend kind of thing. And I said, do you like boys? She goes, oh, God, no, Dad, I don't like boys. And I said, oh, well, do you like girls? She goes, I'm not gay, Dad. She goes, I just don't really care about that stuff. I was like, okay, good. I'm not trying to push you in any direction. I just wanted to know. But it was just so funny. Like in however age, 8, 9, 10 years old, she's like, Dad, I'm not gay.
I know,
just don't like
everyone's so woke now.
It's
it was
so
not
crazy.
like that when we were kids, right? I think it's
No.
great. I think it's so cool. Like it still sucks, I think, for a lot of kids in the South or maybe in more regressive communities. Like coming out is still very hard. So I'm not saying the entire country is past that. But
racism is over. I love that
right.
one.
Yeah, it's so ridiculous. But in LA, it's pretty cool how, you've got these like you said, like 12, 13-year-old girls who have girlfriends and are just like trying to figure it all out.
Yeah. And it's funny because I've had this conversation with a few high school girls and parents of high school girls that they kind of go through this phase. And I had never thought of this. And it's just speculation. I'm not saying that there's any evidence behind this, but I know quite a few girls that were lesbian, they're gay, whatever, during high school. And then all of a sudden they weren't. And I was like, well, that's weird. Were they just experimenting? Did they really, or are they bi? Like, what is it? And a couple of them and a couple of the parents have said, for girls that are especially, they're not sure how to deal with just sex in general, that it's easier and more comfortable nowadays for them to be with another girl because it takes off all the other pressures. And they may not even know that consciously that that's what they're doing, but it's like, this is less invasive and it's because it's more accepted now, it's okay. And they don't have to deal with boys trying to do whatever boys do.
Yeah.
And then when they get older, it's like, okay, now I'm a little bit more comfortable. Let's see what I really like. And okay, maybe I like boys, maybe I like girls. But in high school, it's like, I don't even want to deal with
I could see that
pressure.
also because in high school too, generally, and again, this is, there are always exceptions to this, but generally girls are maturing kind of intellectually, emotionally much faster than boys. So they're going to be able to have, I think, a more respectful relationship with another girl. They might more be on the same page because you're in a class with people your age,
right?
But what is their mental age? You know what I mean?
Right.
So like, let's say you're having sex with another girl. Like you said, it's less invasive. It may be more respectful. And in a way, it's, when you look at the evidence about like straight and gay, not so much relationships, but like sexual interactions. I remember studying this in like psychosexual behavior in college. So this was years ago. It might have been, updated since then. But you would ask the average straight man would say that he has had 10 sexual partners. The average straight woman would say she's had 10 sexual partners. The average lesbian woman would say she's had 10 sexual partners. And the average gay man would say he's had 100 sexual partners. And the hypothesis there is that the girls are the ones who put on the brakes.
Right.
And so if you have a girl in the relationship at all, or a woman, I should say, she is sort of saying, okay, now yes, now no, blah, blah, blah. But when it's guys, it's just yes all the time.
Yeah.
And so, I could definitely see that if you have two women, you don't have to say no or you don't have to worry about all of the social and like stress kind of things around saying no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's just so much easier that if it's public, the boys are just like, she's not even in the playing field.
That's hilarious. Yeah, that's true. It lets them off the hook for not being able to get laid. That's hilarious. And I did it kind of the opposite, but of course I'm older, right? Like I'm in my mid-30s. So there were gay kids at school, of course, but it was still an era. And of course I grew up in Texas, so that may be part of it.
Yeah.
But there's still an era where like when I was in middle school, a bunch of kids called me a lesbian because I kept my fingernails really short and I dressed like a boy. I wasn't. I didn't know. But like it was like an insult. You know what I mean? They would be like, Cara's gay, and like laugh at me. And then I was like hurt over it. Like it was a different era. And of course my lesbian friends were probably like, fuck you. But you didn't even think that way. So I didn't actually have a girlfriend until college and kind of try that. And it was a breath of fresh air and I really enjoyed it. But I also realized that I may have a sexual interest in girls, which I think it's not just more acceptable socially, it's also makes more sense evolutionarily. Like girls are hot. Like we're the part of the species that's like the attraction.
Right.
We're the sex symbol, all that. Like dicks are gross. Right? Like you don't see like man cleavage all over magazines.
Yeah,
or
right,
like,
exactly.
That's not a thing. So that's, a thing. But then I realized that like emotionally, I think I'm more attracted to men.
Right.
But I'm still sexually attracted to women. It's just, it's different. I want the whole package.
Right.
And for me, dating girls was like exhausting.
Right. I'm right there with you. I'm kidding.
So anyway, back to fight science. You own this. Is it like an MMA thing? Because you were saying all these different types.
It's an MMA gym.
It's MMA. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So it's not like a workout place. It's an MMA gym, but I train fighters. It's kind of like my hobby that runs my life and doesn't make any money.
Really? You don't make any money doing that?
Well, I mean,
you don't lose money.
The gym has only been open 4 months, so the gym is still trying to break even and get to that point.
So you do lose money right now.
Yeah, right now. And the fighters, I mean, I've got a couple people that are at the high levels, like in the UFC, but all the other guys, I mean, or girls or women that fight, they're fighting locally. You know, they're fighting 3 times a year because you can't fight more than like 6 times a year. It's just too much on your body. And
they're probably only making like a couple grand if they win.
$1,000, $1,500 if they win, kind of a thing. And it's like, I get 10%. Ooh, $150 for 8 weeks of my time. You know what I mean? It's like I'm doing it because
so they don't pay like hourly or like weekly at the gym.
No, they pay the gym membership, but their gym membership's way lower than the regular person because they're representing the gym. They're paying a percentage back to
the name of the gym is on their clothes.
Whatever.
And then if they win, they give you a percentage.
Yeah, and
That's cool.
and I like the percentage because if they do get to that higher level, if you end up with Conor McGregor and he makes $70 million for a fight, well, my 10% is $7 million for one fight. That's and I've already set the precedence that that's what's going to happen. And yeah, I'm only getting $100 every 4 months from you. But if I've got 10 people each making $1 million, okay, I'm making $1 million.
Yeah, that's true.
That's great.
And is that a common kind of fee structure for MMA?
Yeah, I mean, most people, they have a manager, and manager, it's just like in the entertainment industry. The manager can make 10%, 15%, 20%, whatever the manager wants to make. Manager also gets all their sponsorships and stuff like that.
Because they do all the promotion around that, or they help with and finding the fights.
Fights and getting, sponsors, which in the UFC, you can't have sponsors.
Oh.
They are sponsored by Reebok. You get sponsored by Reebok and the pay scale set. You get $2,500 for your first X amount of fights. And then when you're in the rank, then you get $50,000 or whatever.
Can you still be sponsored, quote unquote, sponsored by your gym though? If you're in the UFC?
You can be sponsored. You can be sponsored. I'm not saying that. I shouldn't have said it. So I misspoke. You can be sponsored. You just can't represent any sponsors in the fight or during fight week.
Oh.
You have to wear Reebok everything.
Gotcha.
And you have to, and even me as a coach, when we get there, they give us, which is cool, we get free clothes, but I have to walk around in that Reebok fight gear. Which is funny because I'm like punk rock kid. I don't wear sweatpants and like running shoes.
Yeah,
like
you don't look like an MMA coach.
Right.
But the funny thing is or the thing that sucks is that you can't wear your own gym t-shirt on TV in a UFC fight.
Right.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and
but
hopefully
you are
they
who you
announce
are.
it.
Hopefully people know, it's like you get the name recognition. People know your gym. They go, oh, he trains in LA. Oh, cool. Because there's UFC in LA for sure. We have a couple like famous gyms, right? But is the culture enormous here, or is it just kind of it's there?
It's crazy because MMA and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu especially, it's bigger in LA. There's more world-class Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools in LA than there are in Brazil now because all the main people come here to make
there's
money.
All the Gracie gyms, right?
Yeah, there's all the Gracies are here. And then you've got, all these famous world champions. There's the Ribeiro brothers, there's the Mendez brothers, there's Cobrinha, who's right by my house, right by my gym. All these like world famous jiu-jitsu guys live and have schools in Southern California, from San Diego to LA. And it's the fight capital of the world, which is tough because, you have people with records that they're 12-1 and they're fighting in Ohio. Well, you're fighting in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
It's like everybody could be 12-1 in Ohio here. Even the guys that are 3-5 are that good here.
It's like how all the valedictorians from across the country end up at like Harvard or Yale, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh shit, I'm not at the top of my class anymore." Everybody is at the top of their class here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And which class are you at the top of, right? And so, but the weird thing is that there's not that many gyms in LA for MMA, and I think part of it is that the money. It's so expensive to have. Real estate here.
Yeah.
Like, I was looking at places and they're like, it's $5 a square foot. I'm like, so my rent's going to be $25,000 a month. Yeah. Okay.
Because you need a lot of space to have rings. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So where's your gym?
Mid-City, which is where I live, which is
Mid-City's great, but it's expensive.
Well, no, it's actually, that's the cool thing about it is it's getting there.
Are you on the south side of Mid-City?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you're in Hancock Park or Miracle Mile, yes. But if you're, like I'm on Washington and La Brea.
Yeah.
And it's like,
area.
But it's coming up. It's still kind of ghetto-y and rough.
Yeah. But there's lots of good food down there.
Yeah, and it's cool. Like where we lived when we moved in, we bought our house 16 years ago or something. And we bought it really cheap. And the cool thing is it's one of the places that continually goes up because they're building and it's becoming gentrified with, the good and bad parts of that. But our house is 100 years old. It's a 100-year-old craftsman house. So it's a really cool house. And all the houses around there, Lafayette Square, and these really cool old houses that were 15 years ago, you could buy an 8-bedroom house in Lafayette Square for $400,000.
And now they're worth like $2 million.
Yeah. But it's still, you still have a little bit of that, like, don't go down that street. You might get shot.
I know. I have some friends who live really close to where you live, and their house is gorgeous. It has like the stained glass and the big stately wood dividers in it and stuff. But they always invite me over for the 4th of July because they're like, oh, we have so many amazing illegal fireworks shows in our neighborhood.
And it goes from March to October, and then it starts over again in November for the new year. So it's like fireworks. People always go, "Are those fireworks?" And I'm like,
yeah.
I know. It's August.
You can hear them all the time here. But the cool thing about where we live in Los Feliz is that you can see, just because of the way our house is positioned, you can see like 30 towns firework display.
Right.
Like the 4th of July at our house is like bananas.
Right.
It's so amazing that you get bored of it.
Right.
Towards the end of the night, you're like, oh, I wish they would stop. I want to go to sleep. But it's very cool. I like that about LA.
Yeah.
It's very, I don't know. It's like, because LA is so spread out, it's one city, but it's all these other communities all around it.
Right.
And it's so like suburban. I always say that about LA. It was an easy transition for me from the suburbs of Dallas because even though it's a big city, it feels like you're living in the suburbs here.
Right.
You have all of the I think the joys and the conveniences of a big city like New York, but you don't feel like you're living in a big city.
Yeah, it's so spread out, which is why public transportation doesn't work in LA.
Yeah, that's why we all have cars.
Yeah, you have to have a car because in one day you may have to go from Redondo Beach to Studio City and then to downtown for different meetings or something. It's like that would take you 3 days on the bus or on a train or something.
It's also why like the joke about LA people is that we're just constantly talking about like, oh, you got to take the 101 to the 134 to the 5. Yeah. And then other people who aren't from here are like, that's really annoying. We're like, no, you don't understand.
Yeah. It's funny though, because I'm from the Bay Area and Bay Area people, for some reason, so many of them hate LA.
I know.
And they've never actually really spent any time. A lot of my relatives and family and in-laws are always like, ugh, LA, it's so this, it's so that. And I'm like, it's really not that. You've read too many
like
weird
Harper's
stories.
Articles.
Yeah. It's always like, oh, I had somebody once tell me, you're moving to LA? Everyone there is so judgmental. I'm like, the irony of your statement is so thick. We really do have the mountains, you have the beach, you have the city, you have the suburbs. It's all in one spot. And you can kind of find whatever you want. And people are always talking about, the traffic. I'm like, I'm from the Bay Area. Yes, the traffic here
in San Francisco is horrible.
Insane.
It's horrible.
Now, it's only for 2 or 3 hours during rush hour.
That's the difference.
But those 2 or 3 hours are a million times worse than LA traffic, in my opinion. You're just stuck in gridlock. Here, it's traffic on a Sunday at midnight.
Yeah.
But
it moves.
It moves.
Yeah,
it's moving.
And you just calculate around it. I mean, I had traffic in Dallas. Like, if you've ever lived in a city, you know what traffic is like.
Right.
It's just you calculate it into your day. And I get it. Like, I was in an Uber the other day, and my Uber driver was complaining about traffic. And it's like, dude, it's 5:30 on a Friday. Like, of course there's traffic. And he was complaining about how expensive LA is, and he was complaining about all these things. And he was like, where are you from? And I said, Dallas. And he was like, oh, you can get a house in Dallas for blah, 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 blah. Or like Plano is where I'm from. And I was like, yeah, but I'd have to live in Plano. No offense to all my Plano listeners. But I don't like Plano.
Right.
I was like, the reason it costs so much here is because you get to live here.
Right. It's so funny. I got into I was ranting on Facebook and Twitter, as I always do, about the mudslides.
Oh my God. I have to go to Santa Barbara in like 2-3 hours, and I have to take a train because I can't drive there. The roads are closed.
And there was like a news story and on Fox News, of course, and the comments were all these people going, good, they should die. Good, liberals
So
this,
horrible.
liberals that.
Yeah, I hope they
and
fall
I'm
into the ocean.
Yeah, and I'm just like, wait, what kind of horrible people are you, first of all? But second of all, this idea that and people go, I wish they would just go away. And no, you don't, rest of America, because we provide like 25% of the tax base we have. And the thing is, if why does everyone keep moving here? If everyone hates it so much, why do we have 30 million people?
I know. We move here even though we have mudslides and forest fires and earthquakes and all of these really risky things.
It doesn't suck. You can't, everybody, these people like keep talking like, oh, California, this, and nobody likes California. They could go away and we wouldn't notice. It's like, no, you would notice. You would notice because all your relatives would be dead, and you guys wouldn't have any money to fund your schools, and you wouldn't have Disneyland, and you wouldn't have good beaches, and you wouldn't have. But it's like
no more Disneyland.
I know, right?
Terrible.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But it's funny though that's this idea that California there, and it's like. Okay, then stay home.
And also one other thing I'm proud of, because of course I'm not a native Angelino. So like I'm proud to be here. I chose to live here and I've only lived here for about 8 years. Another thing I'm really proud of about being from California being in California is that in many ways we really do set the environmental standards for the rest of the country. Like we're always on the bleeding edge of making decisions that are so good for the environment. West Hollywood, especially. I don't even live in West Hollywood, but because West Hollywood is this weird, you may not know this if you're not from here. West Hollywood is like a city within a city.
Yeah,
it's super
like
weird. It's its own city, but it's surrounded on all sides by Los Angeles. So it's a bubble inside of Los Angeles where they have their own mayor and they have their own laws. And they, there's some kind of like they have fur is banned in West Hollywood, foie gras is banned in West Hollywood, but they also were the first community to ban the single-use plastic bag, to ban styrofoam takeout containers. Like they do a lot of really progressive things because it's an incredibly liberal community. And so they don't have any problem passing those kinds of laws. Right. They're super pro LGBTQ. Obviously, in West Hollywood is kind of where the gayborhood is, right in the middle. Right. But it's amazing. And then within LA as a whole, like the first kind of real emission standards, it's great. It's easy for me to drive electric. We talk about EVs a lot not a lot on the show, more on Skeptic's Guide. But it's easy for me to have an EV here, and it'd be harder in Texas, just for geographic and infrastructure reasons.
Yeah, and it's great too because when I grew up in the late 70s, early 80s in the Bay Area, there was this divide of Northern California was liberal, Southern California was conservative.
Oh yeah, because of like Orange County.
And we had like Governor Duke Majan, and we had these people that were like, it wasn't a conservative state, but it was 50-50. So you didn't know who was going to be governor, who was going to win state legislature, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, Schwarzenegger's from here.
Yeah.
That's more recently.
And now it's like California has just gotten, there's still the pockets of San Diego and there's still the pockets in Orange County where it's more conservative, but...
Yeah, but now it's like Brown and Newsom and like much more consistently progressive. And there's still a lot of fiscal conservatism, obviously, because there are rich people in California. There are a lot of rich people in California. And lots of times when people get rich, they start to hoard and they realize they don't want to share. But you do still see even the conservatives in California are generally, unless you're in a really rural area, are generally more socially progressive.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And even I've noticed within the skeptic community, which, it's funny because we've been talking for almost half an hour and we haven't even talked about your comment. No. Like we will. I've noticed that even within the skeptic community, it's really cool because there's nothing that says you have to be progressive to be a skeptic. There are a lot of conservative skeptics, but most skeptics are socially progressive. Mm-hmm. They just tend to be some of them tend to be more like libertarian.
There's a lot of libertarians. Yeah. And there's also this weird thing, I talk about this a lot. I don't think it's as much in the skeptic community as it is in the atheist community.
Yeah,
which
there is a distinction.
Which we conflate the two a lot because usually so many atheists come to atheism via skepticism, which isn't always fact.
Or vice versa. Yeah, we conflate the two because so many people are in both communities.
Right.
But the truth is there are plenty of Christians in the skeptic community, or like non-atheists in the skeptic community, and there are plenny of
non-skeptic atheists.
There are a lot of non-skeptical.
Yeah, when you're talking to someone else, they're like, "Yeah, I don't believe in God, but these aliens."
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
Like, "Oh no!" But it's funny though because I think it's human nature, and I think it's skeptic or free-thinking nature to assume that everyone who has 2 or 3 of your positions shares all of your positions because. Yeah. You think, well, I got to this via this process, this logical, whatever it is that you feel that you got to this process for. I got to atheism because of X, Y, and Z and science and logic and reasoning. And so therefore, everyone else did. So he or she must share the same views I do. And that's one of the reasons we have this huge divide and all this stuff going on right now is because you disagree on one thing. And all of a sudden, you become my enemy because there's this like backlash of, how can you be a free thinker and not believe the same thing that I believe across the board? You're my enemy. And there's so much infighting going on, and people just, I mean, we agree on 99% of the stuff. And because we disagree on 1%, all of a sudden I'm a Nazi or something. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
How about we actually fight the real Nazis? So why are you fighting me over, because I said one word or something?
Yeah.
And I think that's this idea that, we're identical. And then as soon as they find out, wait, we're not identical, their worldview it's very strange. And
there's no reason to believe that we would be identical. Like, you're right. Like, some people, I think, make that assumption because they think, if we all got to this with critical thinking, we must all get to the same conclusions with
all the same conclusions.
But the truth of the matter is, being an atheist, especially skeptic, it's maybe a little bit different because you're priding yourself and working towards always using logic and reason and critical thinking. But like, to be an atheist, it just means that you reject sort of traditional organized religion.
Right.
And so many atheists by nature are like punk rock. They're a little rebellious. They're a little like no go with the flow. So why would you think that they wouldn't be like that in other aspects of their life? There are a lot of conspiracy theorists within the atheist community because they don't trust authority.
Yeah. And I think also that you have this thing where people can become atheists because let's be honest, it's a ridiculous position. Theism or organized religion specifically is very ridiculous. Like, when you really look at the talking snakes and all that kind of stuff, you're like, okay, it's easy to step away from. So a lot of people get there because it's obvious.
Yeah, I got there when I was like 14, long before I knew science.
And it's also can be an emotional thing. Yeah. There are people that become quote unquote atheists, but they are the people that hate God, that you hear the Christian people, you're not an atheist, you just hate God. And you go, no, I don't believe in God. I don't. But there are people that call themselves atheists that were very religious and their dad died or something. And all of a sudden, there's no God. And they came to it through an emotional standpoint.
Or they were, it always bugs me when people find out that I was Mormon. They go, oh, well, then of course you're an atheist. Now I understand why you're an atheist, because you were raised Mormon. And it's like, I'm not like an anti-Mormon atheist. Like, I'm not an atheist because I was oppressed. I'm an atheist because that is the most reasonable position. Like, I would have gotten to this anyway. I mean, there's no way for me to know that, but it seems as though I would. And it's sort of like, I feel like it denigrates, like, so I had no choice. I had no thinking. It's just what I did because I was oppressed.
You're Mormon.
Yeah. But there are people who reject religion because it is so oppressive.
Right.
And that's really the driving force. And they almost become as religious about their atheism.
Or something else, which is what, like I was talking about coming at breakfast, talking about, I'm from Santa Cruz, and I have these friends that they're not religious, my liberal friends, but they have not shed their religiosity, or they have not come to their irreligion via skepticism or critical thinking.
So they're still magical thinkers.
They're still magical thinkers, and they just become religious about their food, or religious about the vaccine thing, or some sort of conspiracy theory, because in like the punk rock idea of don't trust authority. Well, or people say, what's the old question everything, or well, questioning things doesn't mean rejecting it. There's a huge difference between skepticism and cynicism. Yeah, and a lot of people who have the right idea become conspiracy theorists because they're trying to question things, but questioning becomes, I don't trust you, so I'm rejecting it.
Yeah. And like, regardless of the evidence.
Right.
Like, it's like skepticism is about questioning until there's sufficient evidence to make an informed decision, not rejecting evidence.
Right.
Right. But they do that. And you're right. It's so punk rock. Like, I love punk rock. And I think that, 80-90% of the really, like, when you get into political punk rock, of like the Bad Religion lyrics and the NoFX lyrics, like, I really kind of am aligned with. But there's still, even most punk rockers are like anti-big food and anti-big pharma and and you hear that kind of stuff, and you're like, I think their ideas are in the right place, and the aspects that they're concerned about are legitimate, but then they throw the baby out with the bathwater. They paint it with too broad a brush. Right. It's like, just because a pharmaceutical company has a motivation to make money, they also have a motivation to keep people sick. It's like, wait, what? Where is there's a disconnect there?
Yeah, and I love that follow the money thing, because it's like, you follow the money when it's convenient to you, but you're with the cancer. Oh, they're trying to keep the cure for cancer down. Oh, you mean the second largest industry in America, the health food industry? How come you're not following that money? How come you follow the money that you don't like? You're not following this money. I mean, follow the money is a ridiculous idea anyway. But Not that there's a grain of truth to. Yes,
That's the problem. There is a grain of truth to it,
Yes.
which makes it, once something is nuanced, it's much more difficult to parse, right?
Right,
It'd be easy if it was like just a bogeyman, but the truth is there's some truth to it.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
It's funny because like punk rock, I think one of the greatest minds of all time, and I think the greatest lyricist of all time is Jello Biafra. I'm a huge fan of Jello Biafra.
Not one of the greatest voices. I'm sorry. I cannot
his
stand
voice,
the dead
my wife can't say. She's like, please stop. I'm like, but listen to his lyrics.
I know, but you can't get past a
Yeah, a little
I can't
weird.
do it.
But he goes sometimes down this weird, like, sometimes you listen to it and you go, wow, this is dead on.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you're like, okay, it's a little bit too much. They're putting transistor radios into my fillings.
Yeah.
But man, I look back at some of the stuff that he was saying in the 80s that is now common knowledge or is now coming out that, oh no, we actually did that. And people will be like, okay, he's a wacky conspiracy theorist. But some of that stuff, you're like, no, the government actually was doing that. Holy crap. Like, so he does have, he gets a little conspiracy theory for me. But man, some of his lyrics were almost prophetic. Like, I just go, how did this guy really know some of this stuff? It's pretty amazing. Like,
it's always interesting to me when people are like, for example, let's say you're super anti Monsanto. And then when I try to ask you like what it is about Monsanto that you don't like, you pull out the like, oh, it's the GMOs. And it's like, Monsanto is not the only company that like uses like GMOs are used across university. It's like so you're like upset about the actual science. Yeah. But the truth is like you dig a little deeper and it's like, okay, there's legitimate concerns about Agent Orange. You know what I mean? Like Dow Chemical and Monsanto like being involved with like certain types of compounds that were like detrimental and like have a proven track record. Or like maybe your concern is that from a political or kind of emotional standpoint, you are against patenting food or you're, it's a food justice issue. It's like, that's an important, intelligent conversation to be had.
Right.
But instead it's just, no, it's GMOs.
Right.
And you're like, that's such a different issue.
Yeah.
Like, I wish it's like the nuance is just so lacking. You know what I mean? So it bums me out sometimes when it becomes like, what's the word for it? Like a part as a whole, like a synecdoche, where it becomes the stand-in for an issue that's not really the actual issue at hand.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is that I find that a lot with the Monsanto thing is that people I hear him say, oh, well, did you see, first off, there's a lot of misinformation even about the corporate side. They're trying to take over and they don't let people farm and they don't do all these kind of...
There's Indian suicide and it's like, that's all bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. but even if that's your case, okay, well, let's deal with that. Is that a GMO issue or is that a corporate America or a corporate world issue? Isn't that the same issue as monopolies for our cable or monopolies for our utilities? It's still a monopoly issue that you're worried about. Technology, patenting technology. I get it if Apple Computer, they patent. I get it if they're the only ones allowed to sell computers. They shouldn't be able to do that. But Monsanto's not the only ones that are allowed to sell seeds. It's like Big Pharma. My wife works for Big Pharma. And it's like, if you look behind, people go, oh, they're selling this pill for this much, and it only costs 3 cents to make it. They're selling it for $90. It's like, but it doesn't cost 3 cents to make it.
$900 million to research it.
Yeah, and then to market it, and people go, oh, they pushed it through the FDA. You have no idea how the FDA works. If you think something got pushed through the FDA overnight, like you can get all the way to launch, and then the FDA will go, oh, you forgot to put this study in. Yeah. Well, another year, you got to do it again. You know, and it's they just don't understand how it works, and the same thing with food. It's like they have to.
Oh yeah, the
so
USDA,
much research and,
FDA, FTC, like there's all of these different, like to get a GMO on the market, there's a reason that only big multi-conglomerate companies can afford to get GMOs on the market. Like when you go, but Monsanto owns X amount of the GMOs out there. And it's like, because they're a multinational corporation. It's hard for like a scientist at a university who's come up with this great new GMO to actually get it patented and get it sold because it's expensive.
Right.
You know, that's like, but you're
because there are regulations on it to make sure that it's safe.
Yeah,
that's what we want.
Exactly. But this idea of like, oh, they have a seed and they patented this seed. And like, do you know how many scientists I've interviewed for TV shows where I'm like, are you being forced to buy Monsanto seeds? And they're like, what the hell are you talking about?
Right.
And I'm like, well, why do you buy Roundup Ready crops? And they're like, because the year before I bought them, I lost half my crop.
Right.
And the year I bought them, I made 3 times the money.
Right.
Like I buy them because it's a good investment.
Yeah.
Like nobody's going to choose to buy something because they make less money doing it that way.
And you hear people say, oh, well, they're sterile and you can't replant. farmers don't pick the seeds out of their fruit and replant them that way anyway. You buy new seeds every year.
It's just not cost effective. And when they say, oh, but they sue farmers for keeping seeds, it's like, yeah. Like, wouldn't you get mad if you were Apple and you made an iPhone and then somebody figured out that if they take 3 parts of it and then glue them together a certain way, they can make a new iPhone out of it? Like, Apple's going to be like, fuck, we can't let people be like making their own iPhones out of old iPhones.
Yeah.
Like, we sell the iPhone. I don't understand why that's so controversial that somebody's like, no, but I sell that seed, so you can't keep seeds.
It's an emotional response to, they don't want food to be regulated on the business side, but they do want to be regulated on the health side.
We want it to be safe, of course. And I understand if that is your argument, that you think it's a food justice issue, that nobody should have to pay ungodly amounts of money for food. Nobody should be able to own certain types of food. And there needs to be a certain amount of like freely available food to feed a growing population. Like, I understand a food justice argument, but we should be working together to figure out ways to make food freely available to those who need it. But
we don't really have an issue with that. We have lots of food. Now, maybe other countries, it would be nice.
Yeah, but the problem is our regulation, not our regulation, I'm sorry, our proselytizing has affected other countries in a deep way. And so you see, what was it, the Ugandan banana? That was Uganda, right? Where there's like the banana wilt disease. And then like they're fighting back against being able to grow them within their own country because it's such a Western consensus, quote unquote, that GMOs are bad.
Right.
Did you see Food Evolution?
No, I haven't.
The document. Oh, I highly recommend it. It's really, really interesting. It's one of the few food documentaries. It's the kind of pro-GMO.
We'll have that's on my list.
Yeah. It's one of the few where I feel like it's like a really good science. There's so many food documentaries out there that are just utter garbage.
Oh, there's so many of them. But the thing is that unfortunately, people don't understand how documentaries work. Like, you can kind of make, and it sucks because you can say this either direction. In a documentary, you can kind of make it however you want to make the argument.
Yeah, we all saw that in Making a Murderer, right? Like, everybody was like, he didn't do it. And then they read about it more and they were like, oh, there were a lot of selective things that were left out of that documentary.
Right.
It's common. Like, a documentary is a tool for a documentarian to put out a certain position. I just had a documentarian on the show. I'm time traveling a little. I interviewed her yesterday, but actually it was on the show last week. And she did this great series on Netflix called The Confession Tapes.
Right.
And we talked a lot about objectivity as a documentary filmmaker and how you strive to always be objective, knowing that you have your own personal interests and your own personal biases, and that there is a goal. The goal is to wake people up about a certain issue.
Right.
And so let's say that you're a documentarian who truly believes GMOs are evil. Well, you're going to be trying to wake people up about that issue, and you're going to frame your argument that way.
Yeah. Well, that's why I really I think documentaries should be, but it's, again, like anything, people have their biases and people have an agenda. Mm-hmm. But I think that's why Errol Morris, the Thin Blue Line, you seen it?
Yep.
That's why that was so amazing, is because he just did science. What happened? Let's look at this and let's figure this out. No idea what really happened in the situation. And if anything, had kind of a bias one direction, like, oh, it looks like this guy did this murder. And then
sort of a principle of charity. Like, this is what people, so let's assume that and then look at the evidence.
Yeah. And as he was doing the documentary, it was like, oh shit, this is completely different from what we've been told. And he ends up, getting a guy to admit to murder.
Yeah.
And it's like, and to me, it's like, that's what a documentary should be, is like, let's just look at all the information and see if we can find the right answer, even if it disagrees with us.
Yeah, and a good documentary filmmaker is a scientific thinker. And I think Kelly, who I had on the show last week, is a good example of that, because like, she at least goes into it saying, I want to be as objective as possible. And of course, I have a social justice component. So her documentary, The Confession Tapes, is all about people who had coerced confessions.
Right.
So of course she goes into it thinking like, is this person actually but whether or not they're responsible for the crime, we're more concerned about the fact, was this confession come to legally or illegally? Was it an ethical confession?
Right.
And why would people confess even if they didn't do something? So it's interesting because she sort of benefit of the doubts the cops a lot, which I think is a good thing to do.
Yeah, for sure.
To go in and say, maybe they're right. I don't know. But let's really start to dig underneath the layers. It's a tough one. All right, guys, I want to take a quick moment to thank Blue Apron for their support of this week's episode. They are the leading meal kit delivery service in the U.S., and while you may know what they do, you may not know about the types of meals that you can eat when you cook with Blue Apron, like strip steaks with potatoes and spicy maple collard greens, a steakhouse-inspired favorite with a really yummy twist, chili-infused maple syrup. Oh my gosh, so good. With really good ingredients and chef-designed recipes, Blue Apron lets you see what the power of food can do, and they do it in a really convenient way, offering a ton of variety and a ton of flexibility. They have 12 new recipes each week, and customers can pick 2, 3, or 4 recipes based on what best fits their schedule. Guys, it's so yummy, and here's how it works. I've told you before, I got to tell you again. You order the meals you want. They're delivered straight to your door, all of the ingredients that you need to make them, perfectly portioned, so there's no guesswork and no waste. You also get a full color, really easy to read step-by-step recipe card, and you can cook all of these meals in about 45 minutes or less. And each week, you have new meals that you can choose from. They're really elevated, but still pretty easy to make. And I think they bring a lot of variety into the kitchen instead of the same old things that you tend to make for dinner night after night. I know you know what I'm talking about. Guys, Blue Apron is treating you, the Talk Nerdy listeners, to $30 off your first order if you visit blueapron.com/nerdy right now. So check out this week's menu and get your $30 off at blueapron.com/nerdy. All right, guys, let's get back to the show. I love comedy. Is that a dumb line? I love I love to laugh.
No, it's funny though. I when back in the day, I used to hustle shows in like Santa Cruz. I'd go out and like hand out flyers. And I remember saying, I used to go, hey, you like comedy? Like it was like a joke, like, and I'd hand people a flyer, hey, you like comedy? And just because people didn't want to take a flyer, they'd be like, no.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm like, what do you mean no?
Laughing is not, it's not healthy.
Do you enjoy enjoying yourself? No, I do not.
No, I do
okay.
Not. No, I do not. I'm a very serious person. I don't have time in my life for a comedy show. It's funny because I don't think I really went to a comedy show until I lived in LA. Like, I wasn't part of comedy culture in Texas or even in New York when I lived there. Like, I think because once I moved to LA, I knew a lot of comedians and it became kind of my friend group that I started going to comedy shows more and I realized how great it is. But there is sort of a mystique around comedy clubs. Right. Kind of like, I don't know if that's for me.
Oh,
you know, I think people actually think that.
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah. I can see that people, and some people, that's their thing. Yeah. Like, I know people that just go every week. Like I'll go to a town or a city that I've played and like years later and I'll see the same. They're like, oh, I saw you in 2007. I'm like, wow, I come every weekend. It's like.
I think also for me, because I don't drink, sometimes comedy clubs piss me off because they have a drink minimum.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, what is that? What if you're like in a program? I'm not, but what if you were in a program?
Right.
Like, but usually you can buy food and stuff.
Now it's a 2-item minimum.
2 items.
Change that because they're like, Or I remember when I was younger, when I was like 18, I would go to the clubs there was one of the punchlines in the Bay Area was 18 and over. Mm-hmm. So it would be like, I'll just get I'll get a Diet Coke or whatever. And they're like, here's your $17 Diet Coke. You're like, okay. Because they're like, oh, well, water. They would charge you for water because they're like, well, that can be your drink, but we're going to charge you $8 for the tap
that's
water.
how we make money.
Yeah.
And don't pay our comedians.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've been doing it a long time, you said. What did you say, 18 years?
Longer, since 92.
Since 92.
So
I obviously
25 years.
can't add. Since 92. And you started up in the Bay Area.
Well, oddly enough, I'm from the Bay Area. And I started down here because I moved down. I tried to get into the clubs up there and they wouldn't let me in. The Punchline didn't have an open mic. The only club that had an open mic was the Holy City Zoo, which was this iconic little, it's like as big as your off. The whole club is like 300 square feet. So, but it was like Robin Williams was part owner and it's like Will Durst and like all these great comics that the Bay Area people, I mean, it'd been around from, I don't know, the 60s or something. It had been around forever. And it was like this cool, great, iconic place. But they were 21 and over. And I remember going in there and they wouldn't let me in.
Because you weren't 21.
I wasn't 21.
Hilarious.
And I went in on my 21st birthday and I signed up to get on. And the lineup that night was like people that I'd been going to comedy for like 3 years, getting, just watching. And people that, some of them are famous now, but at the time they weren't famous, but they were Bay Area famous. Like Patton Oswalt wasn't remotely famous, but he was Bay Area famous. Everyone knew, oh, that's Patton Oswalt. He's like, he's awesome. Wiley Roberts and, Johnny Steele. And I think Robin Williams popped in and did a thing. And I'm like, I'm not following Robin Williams. So I completely I was just so self-conscious that are these people going to think I'm a hack? Are they going to think I suck? So I ended up not going up.
Oh no.
And then I moved down here to LA because I had a screenplay that we had written, and my friend and I were like, oh, let's move to LA. And we had some leads and, kind of like this deal with this guy. Oh, let's go down and see what we can do. So I moved down here and we were staying in a burnt out, it was right after the riots. And my friend's brother was going to USC and he was staying in this house, kind of like a fraternity, but it was off the road. It had a burnt out room from the riots. And they're like, yeah, you guys can stay here until you find a place, fix up the room. And we were looking for jobs every day. And in the papers or whatever, the reporter and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was a little ad that stand-up comedy. And my friend goes, hey, you should just go do it. So I went down, it was at the Ice House in Pasadena, and I auditioned, and then the guy gave me a spot, and it was great. So I did it for a couple of years here. And then when I got to where, okay, I can make a living, I can at least do this on the road. My wife was going to school in Long Beach. She finished school and she was doing her student teaching. So we moved back to the Bay Area.
Oh, okay.
She taught in San Francisco, and I really started my professional career, and most of my formative years were in San Francisco.
So you were sort of an amateur comic while you were down here, and then you really started making money up there.
Yeah, I started going on the road and doing it full time, and I moved in with my sister, and so I didn't have, my rent was really cheap. And
was it we moved in with my sister, or you lived with your sister and your wife lived somewhere else?
Yeah, because I moved back to Santa Cruz, and my wife, because she wasn't my wife at the time, she was my girlfriend. She moved to San Francisco and was doing her student teaching and doing some other school in San Francisco, and I was living very cheaply, almost rent-free with my sister so that I could build this comedy career thing. Yeah, so we were there for another, 4 or 5 years. And then in 2000, I moved back. I had signed with a big management company, and they were going to put me on this TV show that, it was a sketch TV show. I can do a lot of characters and impressions and stuff. And they were going to put me on this new sketch show. And so they're like, move down here, and when season 2 comes up, we're going to, we'll put you in. And then it lasted 6 episodes, and I didn't end up getting on the TV show. But then we had moved down here.
It's such an LA story.
Yeah, totally.
So at the beginning, or since then, have you always had this sort of atheist skeptic bent, or is that more of a new development?
Well, it's funny because I've always been an atheist.
Yeah.
Always been a skeptic.
Personally. Yeah.
And I did some of it. I used to do some jokes about people who believe in ghosts, and I always had a couple jokes that were about being an atheist. Not even about being an atheist, but I would make jabs at people who believe in God. But it didn't always go that well in my whole act. So I would do it here and there just as this is who I am and whatever. But it wasn't my focus. My focus was, like I said, characters and talking about my family, talking about my upbringing, that sort of stuff. But I always had a little bit of that slant, but not a lot. And then I had my daughter, and I decided to not be on the road. I'm like, I don't want to be one of those dads that's gone 50 weeks out of the year with their kid. So I was like, I'm going to ease back from comedy. I ended up not going on stage for 5 straight years, not even locally.
Were you just focused on MMA stuff? What were you doing?
I was doing the MMA thing, and I was writing and directing. When I first moved down here, my manager was like, don't go on the road so much. I want you in LA. I want you going on stage here. I want you doing auditions. So I took a day job that was freelance as a assistant commercial editor.
Yeah.
And I eventually became an editor, but it was cool because I could still go for 2 weeks and do comedy and then come back and be on a gig for a month and then go to 2 weeks and do comedy. And then I got into voiceover.
Well, between voiceover and editing, those are amazing skills to have as a comic if you want to do anything self-publish.
Right.
Because you can produce your own comedy shows. Which
is what I eventually ended up doing. So I was off for a while, and I was doing a lot of voiceover work. I was one of the 2 voices of the Bravo network. I was the voice of Disney XD when it first launched.
Really?
Yeah.
Hilarious.
Just all the, just the coming up next, whatever that stuff.
Wait, let me hear that one more time.
Coming up next on Disney, whatever, right? On Disney Channel. That's it. But Bravo is completely different. Bravo's way over the top. But and then I did the Fuel network for a while, which eventually that went away because it became Fox Sports 1.
Oh, okay.
But Fuel was it was that laid back kind of, it's all surfing and skateboarding. And so it was Fuel, whatever. Just yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was doing that. And it was weird because when my daughter was, 6, 7. I don't know how old she was. She had never known me as a comedian.
Oh,
but I
funny.
still like self-identified, like that's who I am. And that's what I've been wanting to do that's what I've done since I was a kid, basically.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, my daughter doesn't even know that I'm a comedian. So I took her to, on my 40th birthday, I took her to an open mic at a coffee shop. And I said, I'm going to go up on stage. My wife was out of town.
How old was she?
I think she was 6. Aww. So I'm like, just sit here.
That's so cute.
And I'm going to go up. And the thing is, like, it was this open mic where you got like 5 minutes. And I hadn't been on, so all these people are brand new comics. So they don't know anything about me.
Yeah. And so it's a good place for you because you're like dusty.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So, but I've also was a comedian on the road for like 14 years. So
exactly.
So the guy's like, all right, well, here's how it works, pal. Like, I'm like, oh, cool.
Like, okay.
And my daughter's watching all these people go up there and just kind of struggle in this coffee. And so I go up there and I just crush it for 5 minutes. And I get off stage and people are like, have you done this before? Like, and my daughter was like amazed, like, whoa, that was fucking cool, So
I hope at 6 years old, she was like, that was fucking cool.
Yeah, she probably was. She probably did. And I remember one time I said something to her, I said, F that kid. And it was some kid who was being like bullied to her. She goes, Dad, I can't go tell the kid to fuck themselves. I'm like, I know, you're right. That would be bad for a kindergartner to say that. I said F and she said, but anyway. But so I get off stage and I was like, wow, that I missed this so much. Yeah. So I started doing comedy, but it was really great because I'm like, I don't need to make a living doing this.
Yeah.
I don't rely on this anymore. So it freed me up to go, I'm just going to go up on stage and talk about whatever the hell I want to talk about. Mm-hmm. And if people don't like it, who the hell cares? They're not paying my bills anymore.
Yeah.
And that's kept me out of all the clubs I used to work. Like I've been trying to get back into some of the clubs and they're like, we've seen your new stuff. No, you're not coming into our club.
You're going to piss off everybody in the audience. Yeah.
But I was the most prolific I've ever been. I just started writing and going up on stage. And then I started producing my own shows because I'm like, well, if I can't go work the Chuckle Hut or whatever, I'll just rent a theater and I'll get all these skeptics and atheists to come out and enjoy my stuff.
Which is funny because that's what huge comedians do anyway. Like they still go and like keep up, at the smaller clubs. Right. But really big comedians do rent out theaters and sell out theaters. Like that's kind of the ultimate goal. Yeah,
it's funny because I see these people like, some fairly famous comics. I would say now really famous. Like you look at like a Louis C.K. or a Bill Burr, but even Bill Burr a few years back was famous and he had his crowd, but he wasn't Dave Chappelle. He wasn't George Carlin famous.
Yeah.
But I was like, man, Doug Stanhope, great example. Mm-hmm. He's got his following. He could go rent out a place and sell 500 tickets at $25 to $50. And I add those numbers up and I'm like, you could do 2 gigs a month, dude, and you'd be totally fine.
And a lot of big comics do that. They'll do they'll just leave on the weekends. Yeah. Like they might have a day job, because the goal for a lot of people is to like get a TV show because then it's like steady work and you get to stay in LA and you go to work like 9 to 5, whatever. So it's like you get a TV show, you work during the day and then you do like 1 gig a weekend.
Right.
So 4 gigs a month. Yeah. And it's like make hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right.
If you add all that up.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And I don't even care about, honestly, like if I could just make a decent living.
Yeah.
And only have to work when I want to work and what I want to work.
Exactly how I feel. That's why I
don't
love
care
podcasting.
If it's like if I'm making $20 million a year. Like I don't need to do that. I really don't. And I'm pushing it. I'm getting closer to that area. But I want to get to a point where it's not as much work and it's not as much risk. Because there's sometimes where I show up and I'm like, oh shit, I sold 50 tickets. Yeah. Man, and there's other times where I'm like, hey, I just sold 800 tickets. That's amazing. If I could sell 300 to 800 tickets twice a month and just by putting my name up and running a couple ads because I had enough name recognition to where people go, oh, Ian Harris is in town. Let's go buy a ticket.
Yeah.
If I get to that level and I can just sustain that, I'm fine. I don't care what anybody says. I would be fine that way for the rest of my life, doing what I like to do.
Absolutely. Do you have a podcast?
I do not because I know I have so many people are like, you should do a podcast.
I'm going to try and convince you to do a podcast. Okay. We're going to have like many a conversation because first of all, you're really good at it.
Oh, thank you.
This is a very easy conversation to have. And second of all, you actually can make money making podcasts. You don't think about it and it's not something you should do if you are like out to make money. But I find that it's a very supportive part of my whole career.
Right.
Because the people listening to us right now support the show.
Right.
It's free. That's what I love about podcasting. It's a way to give this sort of content to people for free, but you always have a handful of people who are like the patrons.
Right.
And you can sell ads, which helps a lot, but it's like foundational. It helps you be more risky in your career aspirations because you have this consistent thing.
Right.
And there are ways to do it so that you're not biting off more than you can chew. It took a while, but like I think everybody who listens to the show knows that I'm back in school now. I'm working on my PhD. I also, travel for television a lot. I give talks and things like that. And the podcast is like my old standby, and I love it for that.
Yeah, it's so funny because I've had so many thoughts. I work with another comedian, Ty Barnett, and we do one of the tours we do is called the Divided Comedy Tour. We're basically the same age. We've been friends for, 18 years. Mm-hmm. And it's like, he's black, I'm white, he's from Chicago, I'm from Santa Cruz. We're both liberal, but I'm an atheist. He's not a Christian, but he's not a non-believer. Yeah. Like he always goes, he's an atheist, I'm going to heaven.
I love that.
And we're like best friends.
Yeah.
And so we've thought about maybe doing that as a podcast because we both get really political and we both get crazy but we haven't really put it together. And people say, oh, you should do an MMA podcast. And then other people are like, oh, you should do a Skeptic thing. And I'm like, I don't know what I would do. And then I'm thinking maybe I'll just do like a Joe Rogan kind of thing where it's like, I just talk about whatever the hell I talk about.
That's what I do.
Right?
The reason I podcast now, or let me see if I can word this differently. Like cause and effect is a very difficult concept as somebody who's really into psychometrics and statistics. But the impetus for me podcasting was that I was a regular guest on Joe's show. And Joe was like, you should have a podcast. And I was like, I don't, and I was like really stressed out at work. And I had an EP that was making me feel horrible. It was super sexist. And it was, whatever. And then he was like, no, it's like your thing. You get to do whatever you want. And there's no producer. You're your own producer. And then of course on air on his show, he was like, guys, tell Cara she should podcast. So I got like thousands of tweets from people supporting.
Right.
And then he was so sweet. He was like, I'll be your first guest. You can even come use my studio. We'll record, my producer will help you with all the audio stuff. He'll record it and give you the file. And so my first guest was Joe, which helped launch me in a position where people already listened. You know what I mean? I didn't have to start from scratch. And it was amazing. Yeah. And it just like really, I don't know. I don't think if Joe had pushed me that I would have done it. And so I owe a lot to him.
And now he has like a golden touch. If you're on his thing, it's crazy. Like people are on his thing and the next thing you know, they're celebrities. It's like comedians. Everybody goes, how come you're not on Joe Rogan's podcast? They're like, bald comedian, MMA.
That's true.
He loves science, guys. He always has like, all these science.
He loves talking about science.
And he's an atheist or some form of non-believer on some level.
And it's like he's super skeptical about some things, but super credulous about other things. So it's really fun to talk to him because you can sort of, you can get educated from him, but then you can educate him about other issues and you can argue, but you can also agree. Like it's
I actually like how he's kind of believes in a lot of nonsense and woo type stuff. Like he gets into conspiracy theory stuff. Yet the second he'll have somebody on to challenge it.
Yeah.
And when that person shows him the evidence, he goes, oh, okay, now I get it.
Yeah, he's definitely
like,
not
flat Earth, and then he's like, Neil Tyson will be like, blah blah blah, and he'll go, oh, why didn't somebody say that? Okay, yeah, now I get it, or whatever the deal is. Like
he's actually a pretty good skeptic. People don't think so, but he's a good skeptic because he's really open-minded.
Right.
We can argue about something, and if you can convince him and show him the good evidence,
absolutely.
He's like, oh,
that's what I really like about his stuff. It's like, again, a lot of people are like, I was introduced to the moon landing being fake through Joe Rogan. And I'm like, but he doesn't actually really believe it's fake anymore.
Yeah, it's the same thing with like people are always like, oh, is Joe believes in Bigfoot? And I'm like, no, Joe's open-minded. And it's the idea of a primate being in America is interesting to him. Right. So I think he talks about it, but I don't think he actually fucking believes in that shit.
Yeah. But the people who want to hear what they want to hear,
That's true. Yeah, the selective kind of.
Yeah, he's the one guy that I'm like, man, I know him. We're not friends, but I know him both from comedy and from the MMA world. But yeah, it's almost like I almost feel like maybe we're too similar, or it's like
you would have fun. It's funny. People ask me when I'm going to go back on because it's been years, but I sometimes wonder if, obviously, Joe, you don't listen to this podcast. Well, if you were listening, that would be amazing. But I sincerely doubt you're listening to this podcast. I don't think he's a big fan of Steve Novella's. And now that I'm on Skeptic's Guide, I'm afraid he might be like associating me with Steve.
Oh, really?
I feel like I got caught in the middle of an argument they once had about cryotherapy.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like there were emails flying back and Steve was like, why don't you tell Joe to come on the show? And then Joe was like, fuck that, I'm not coming on his show. Why don't you tell him to come on my show? And I was like, I don't want to be in the middle of this anymore.
Oh, wow.
What is going on? So I don't know. Maybe I should. I'll hit him up.
Yeah.
Hit him up. I'm so busy too. I'm like never home anymore. Are you ever home anymore, or you don't travel as much?
Well, I am now because I got the gyms in September, so I kind of have to be here. I teach like almost myself and my partner teach basically every class right now because
we can't afford
to
you can't hire a bunch
to hire anybody yet.
What a great fun thing though, because that's like your passion, isn't it?
Yeah. No,
I
it's
love that.
it's cool. It's cool. But the downside is that classes are at night. And
Oh,
that
so you
used
have
to be
no
kind of
life.
my time to chill with my kid and hang out. And now it's like, now I'm gone every night.
You gotta turn her into a 13-year-old gym rat girl. Like she's just gotta hang out at the gym with you now. And like she'll get hard.
In the summertime, like she goes with me when I used to, and our team training is in the morning. So she would just go with me every summer. And it was just like, you're sitting at the gym for 2 hours every day. And
Like
she'd
that
be on
smell
her,
of sweat.
Yeah.
Mm.
She'd be on her little iPad or whatever. And it was funny when she was really little. I used to teach classes, and gosh, she was probably like 3 or something, 3 or 4. And I remember I was teaching a class, and she was there, and she was sitting there coloring or doing her thing, whatever. And I had to use the restroom, and I'm like, I got to go to the bathroom. And I go, man, I don't know what to do here. I got to go to the bathroom. And she goes, I got this. She was going to teach jujitsu. I got this. I'm like, you got this, huh? She's like, yeah, I got this. And she was like 3. I'm like, what the hell?
Did you let her try? You should have let her try.
I said, all right, daughter's got the class, guys. I'm going to go.
These big dudes are like, oh, okay.
Hilariously.
That is the cutest thing ever. But yeah, I feel like there is nothing better than a good pair of noise canceling headphones. This has been the greatest investment of my life. You bring her with you at night, sit down, put on those noise canceling headphones, do her homework.
Yeah.
So bonding time there.
No, yeah, she's good. She comes sometimes. Like she does the 2 things that I want her to do.
Mm-hmm.
I refuse to force her to do, even though I keep pushing it. One is jujitsu and one is serving.
Yeah, because you don't want her to hate it.
Right.
If you force her to, she'll hate it.
Yes.
But you keep hoping she'll come to it on her own.
Yeah, and it's like, so she does jujitsu, but she'll only do it with one of the women who's at my gym, who she loves, who she's like, only doing it if Cherry teaches me. If Cherry teaches me, I'll go, but I'm not coming to a regular class. Like I have an all women's jujitsu class on Sundays. I'm like, come to the all women's jujitsu. It's all girls, they'll all be there. And she's like, Cherry gonna be there? No, not today. I'm not going then. And I'm like, you can learn from somebody else. No, I can't. That's the only
hilarious.
But the fact that when she is there, it's like, okay, I'm willing to learn.
Proud papa.
From her. So, yeah, but one of these days she'll be in there more and more and more.
So I just realized that we've been talking for over an hour.
Oh, shoot,
Doesn't time fly?
Yes.
It's amazing.
I talk a lot. I'm sorry.
No, I like it. And we haven't even plugged your new special.
No, that's quite all right.
So no, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it for a minute. Tell me about your new special.
Well, it's my second special. It's kind of a weird story because I done a special on the apocalypse, the Mayan apocalypse a few years back. And it got distributed in 2014. But at that time, Netflix wasn't really, they were just coming out and it was a new guy. And he was like, I'm not taking anything from somebody that's not famous.
Yeah.
And it was a lot about religion. It was really kind of edgy and a little weird, like almost TED Talky. Like some people were like, is this stand-up comedy or is this a lecture? What is this? Which is cool. That's what I was going for. So it went to like regular stuff. I went through a distributor and it got out there and it got some good reviews and whatever. But I made a connection with that guy and I ended up directing a couple of comedy specials. And then I directed one for a guy named Dwayne Perkins and we sold it directly to Netflix and they loved it. The guy was like, wow, this is so cool. Different look. His comedy's really unique. And so he bought that one from us. And I started talking to him and he said, well, if you do more stuff, now I've been here a couple of years. He goes, I can bring in stuff I like now.
I can be more creative in my
yeah. And he goes, I like some of your other stuff, but I wasn't in the position to pick it up at the time. He goes, so if you do more stuff, unless it's an original, I can't say I'm going to buy it, but wink, wink, nudge, nudge, get me your next stuff. And it had been a couple of years since I'd done, so I said, I'm going to shoot this special. I have a new hour. I'm going to do this. So I geared up and I self-produced this whole thing.
And where did you do the actual stand-up?
In Santa Cruz, my hometown.
Cool.
I decided, okay, it's the first one I did in LA. I'm like, I'm going to go home and I'm going to pack a theater at my hometown. And it was really great. It was one of the best. And I wanted to make it more mainstream so that it would go so there wouldn't be any problem. I put in a lot of, like yourself, I did really cool.
I'm in it.
You're
it's
in
so
it,
cool.
yes. And I did this like cool, and I've actually have all the little clips that I did this little mini documentary for the opening credits and the end credits. Penn Gillette's in it, and Lawrence Krauss and Julia Sweeney. Yeah,
because you interviewed me real quickly at the Reason Rally.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of like those kind of like our crew.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought, well, this would be a cool addition, and also it'll add something to it that they haven't seen before. Where they go, oh, I've never seen these other people, and people who are known in different fields, like Lawrence Krauss is I mean, he's not a celebrity, like he's not Dave Chappelle.
No, but he's science famous.
But he's science, and Penn Jillette's got his little thing and different takes on stuff. I go, this would be a really cool thing for them. So I did that, put it together, shot and it's the same crew that I used for Dwayne's, and really well done. And I edited it myself. I finished editing it, and I go back to the guy. He goes, "I'm no longer in that department."
Yeah. That's also such a Hollywood story.
And the new people,
everybody gets moved around so much, and you have a deal with somebody, and then they get fired, or they move over to or they now I run this thing at like a Christian network. Sorry,
right. Yeah. And the new people, the new guy I didn't know, but he was a comedy guy, which makes it worse because then he has his crew.
Yeah.
So I never even got a hold of him. So for like months and months and months, I'm like having my agent and people send it to him, and not doing it myself because I'm like, I don't want to come at this, here's my self-produced thing and you don't know me.
Yeah.
So having somebody else do it means that they don't actually do anything.
Yeah, it means that they're not motivated.
Yeah. So like 8 months later, I'm like, and then there was a new person came in from Comedy Central who I did know a little bit. So I had my partner hit her up and she goes, I haven't even seen it yet. I'm like, I've been waiting for 9 months and you guys haven't even seen it yet.
Wow.
So got it to her. She called. I talked to her directly and she was like, it's really great. She goes, your performance is one of the better performances I've seen in my 20 years of Comedy Central. It's really great. She goes, but we're not really picking anything up that we don't produce now. And I'm like, I shot this thing and I had a verbal thing and now it's a year later.
Yeah.
So I ended up having to go the VOD route. I went through Adam Carolla's company, Chassis Media.
Smart.
So Adam, he's got a distribution company, does a lot of documentaries.
Yeah.
So they put it out. Now it's pay-per-view. I got to make the money back $4 at a time, which is...
And you have to promote it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you find it? Like, where would I go to watch it?
So it's on Amazon, iTunes, Google Play.
Oh, great. So
it'll
it's
eventually
everywhere.
be on Amazon Prime, but they, of course, hold off because Amazon Prime is free and a low...
Yeah,
they want
for people
to buy
who are
it.
subscribed, you can watch it for free. Gotcha.
So it'll be on cable, like all the cable VOD, and it'll be on Amazon Prime in a couple of months. And right now it's on Amazon and iTunes, and it's called Extraordinary. It's pretty good. Like so far I have 100% 5-star reviews on every platform.
Hey, that's amazing.
Which is good because my first one was like 50% 5-star and 50% 1-star. This guy should kill himself. So I'm like, good. No 1 stars. This guy should kill himself yet. That's good.
It's an improvement. Yeah.
Yes.
And so, you can just, on your iPhone, you can just order it and watch it like right there.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Okay, that's great. So extraordinary as in extraordinary.
Yes. Yeah. I remember that. Exactly. Yes. And I spelled it like, I didn't make it a dash. I spelled it extraordinary, but then I capitalized the O.
Yeah.
And people are like, well, is it extraordinary or is it extraordinary? I'm like, yes.
Yes. Oh, I love it. So guys, check out Extraordinary. And you know what? I'm just realizing I didn't ask you my final 2 questions. So the last thing I'm going to do.
Okay.
I ask everybody the same 2 questions when we close the podcast.
Okay.
And this is awesome because you're a comic and we've been like up here this whole time, but I'm going to ask you some like big picture, like shit questions.
Okay. I like big pictures.
Good. So when you think about the future, whatever context is relevant to you, you can go personal, your own personal future, the future of your life, your family, whatever, or you can go like bigger, global humanity shit.
Okay.
Number 1, what is the thing that you're most concerned about? What keeps you up the most at night? What worries you? What's like, existentially like angsty? On the flip side of that, so we don't kill ourselves.
Right. Right.
What are you most hopeful, optimistic, excited about? Positive things.
I think it's funny because they're almost the same thing. I really when I look around at our current political climate and I look at the divisiveness of our country and the world and Trump and the Trump followers and the anti-science, that scares the shit out of me.
Yeah, the tribalism.
And people are willing to do stuff that I don't think they would normally do just because of tribalism. Like, it's like, are you really a racist? Are you really willing to start a nuclear war? Are you really willing to kill me or let me die in a mudslide because I don't like Trump?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Like, that scares the shit out of me.
Because I'm pro Planned Parenthood? Like,
right.
What?
And just because climate change is a quote unquote liberal movement, you're willing to let the planet die because well, I ain't no damn paying taxes for the EPA or whatever the hell you think it.
Yeah, that's the weird shit. Like during the Obama era when people would legit be anti an Obama policy, which was a Republican policy before, but because this black man said it, now it's,
And if you say that, the race card, well, then what else is it? Like,
I know. It's like people were really pro Romney's, public healthcare initiative in Massachusetts. Republicans were.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, that was verboten.
Right. And everyone was so anti-ACA. And then as soon as it got in, they're like, oh, wait, this is great. Mm-hmm. And now that Trump wants to get rid of it, they're willing to get rid of it. And they gets rid of it. And they're like, we don't have health care. We're like, what do you want? Read. Just read, you freaking idiot. Like, do you have any idea what's going on in your life? Like, you don't even know what affects you directly. It's crazy. But the positive side is that, like we talked about earlier, the new generation is so, even the new generation in Texas, even the new generation in Alabama, even if it's not a majority. I mean, you're still living with people's parents who are, if you're from certain parts of this country, there's still tons of community where the parents are racist and backwards and whatever, and their kids are going to be that way.
Absolutely.
But it's fewer kids because we are becoming more globalized. And that's when you know somebody who's different than you is when you start realizing, oh, wait, when all these GOP people that all of a sudden become pro-marriage equality, when their grandson comes out gay, when their niece comes out gay, all of a sudden, oh, wait, now I can have empathy because it affects me directly, which isn't empathy, but you know what I mean? But
it's true. And when these kids are like on YouTube, like YouTube is their form of entertainment. And so they're looking at other people who don't look like them, who don't sound like them because they're famous from another country and they have different perspective, because it's so easy now to travel without traveling.
Yeah. And I think that that's a huge hope for the future, that eventually there's going to be a lot more of them. And when I look right now, what we need to fix, and I'm hoping that Republicans in power right now don't just completely do the money grab and say, screw the Constitution, screw it. And I hope that they get, I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen anyone doing what's correct. They've just been doing, even the ones that are all the never Trumpers are just backing what, you hear John McCain say all this stuff and then he goes ahead and votes for whatever, instead of going against what he says was, whatever, the ACA, I'm against it. And then against Trump's, and then he ends up voting along those lines. And that makes me insane. I'm hoping that they don't screw everything up before then. But I think the main reason we're even seeing what we have is because of the gerrymandering and because of the way the redistricting. If we can get that taken care of,
it's
the overwhelming majority of people are fairly rational in this country.
Yeah, it's unfair that a small vocal minority has so much power because they've managed to rig the system.
Right.
And that's not cool. It's true. Once you actually look at how people think,
right.
It's
like 70%. It's overwhelming majority of this country believes in climate change and wants something that is pro-science on some level.
Yeah.
Even if they don't quite always act that way, they think they're pro-science, which means they can be convinced otherwise.
Yeah, and is socially progressive.
Absolutely.
It's one thing if you're fiscally conservative. I'm not going to touch that. I understand it.
Yeah.
It's not my view, but I totally understand it. I understand individualism and, personal responsibility and a lot of these kinds of, but to just be like them homos, that's just who is like that anymore,
Yeah, and it's so fewer younger generation is that way.
Yeah.
So the only problem is, can we get to them before the old curmudgeon-y white jerks that are in there, before they completely screw up and get rid of the Constitution and screw us long term? That's what I'm worried about, is we've got a couple of years here to turn things around.
The midterms are coming up. Yeah, it's really important that we all get out during the midterms because I think we're going to shift the Senate.
I certainly hope so. I mean, we only need two. We need something for sure.
I think we are. I think that, unless we get complacent, which hopefully Trump will not let us get complacent, because every day there's new outrage. Let's stay outraged.
Yeah.
Let's get to the polls. Let's not forget that Trump is not the only, the president is not the only position we can vote for. And that if we can change the legislative branch, Trump has much less power.
Well, and the thing is that I'm actually not even so worried about Trump. I think he's a moron.
Yeah.
I think he's a complete idiot. I don't think he believes most of what he says. I don't even think he knows what he believes. I think he's probably more progressive than he lets on, although I think the more he gets into his world, the more I think he's just very influenceable.
Yeah, it started with a dog whistle, but now he's believing his own garbage.
Yeah. But I think, I don't think he gives two shits about abortion either way, or about these other things that, I think he's probably an atheist.
I think he probably just really enjoys being like a puppet master.
Yeah.
I think that's it gives him it's like a trip for him to be so powerful.
But the scary ones to me are the Mitch McConnells and the Paul Ryans, because they are looking at this and going, oh, we've got all the power. We can do whatever the hell we want right now. And even though everyone tells us they don't want it, we don't even care. Like they're saying
They don't even care about their constituents.
they don't care.
Yeah.
And that's why 30 people in the House are retiring. How obvious is that they either know that someone's got some dirt on them. There's been some Russian hacked emails that they've got emails talking about little boys or whatever heck they've got in their emails.
Me Too, or there's major Me Too shit going on.
Or they're just like, hey, let's money grab and get the hell out of here while we can. And that doesn't seem to bother their base, which is crazy.
That's what pisses me off is that like the number one indicator of getting reelected is that you've already been elected. Like incumbents get elected like significantly more often than challengers, even if you hate the incumbent. It's like, go to the freaking polls, people.
It was 11%, 1 or 2 elections ago, Congress was 11% approval rating.
Yeah. And they reelected everybody.
98% recumbent. Like, how does that doesn't make any sense? How can you be 11% approval rating and get elected 98% reelected? It doesn't make any sense.
It makes no sense. I could talk to you for hours. This is why you need to start a podcast.
Yeah. And I'll just have you on as a guest. And
there you go. We'll just do that all the time. This is now just going to be the Ian and Cara show. Guys, check out Extraordinary. Look it up on iTunes. Google it.
Yeah, there you go.
You'll find it all the ways you can find it.
Ian Harris Extraordinary. It pops right up.
There you go. Ian, thank you so much for joining me. This was a blast. Yeah, and everybody listening, thank you for coming back week after week. I'm really looking forward to the next time we all get together to talk nerdy.